Panero Dairy claim against the college. The college voted on a motion by John Zumwalt, a second by Earl Mann, a unanimous vote that the Panero Dairy claim against COS be rejected, and that be sent to our reject the claim, and there's a process to go through after that, to go through JP, and that's to go through that process. And the second one is item 2 under closed session, which is has to do with the Larry Center, a suit between Casco and COS. The board voted unanimously on motion by Greg Sherman and second by Ken Nunes to approve a proposed settlement agreement to the college at Casco Fabrication Inc., a California corporation. That vote was unanimous as well. And with that, please lead us to the pledge of allegiance.
Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, are there any public comments concerning items that are on the agenda? Are there any public comments regarding items not on the agenda? That leads us then to the student trustee report. Ms. Garcia.
So for student senate, we have been up to a lot of things. Back in after spring break, we did a water conservation video with Kevin Fester, which I'm not sure when it will be coming out. And we also passed out flyers to help students in small ways save water in their homes and on campus. We also had a sandwich day, which we distributed over 300 sandwiches to students so that they could have a meal for that day. We also participated in STEPS, which is a program to help high schoolers get a feel for COS and help them register for their classes. We also hosted a club advisor luncheon to thank all the club advisors on our campus who've done a lot with helping our COS community. And we participated in Spring Bling, which brought out a couple vendors. I believe it's hosted by Classified, and we just participated in that. And we also tried to get students to register so that they could vote for the upcoming election. We also did a military appreciation day, and we passed out ribbons to students so that they could show their support for the military. A couple of students participated in the Master Plan Summit. So each of us came out feeling really good about going to that. We learned a lot that we did not understand very well in the beginning, and then we understood a lot of whatever college wants to do and is planning to do in the next 10 years. And we also finally had our spring elections, and transit. The transit fee was passed by the student body, and we also have a new elected board for next year, and you'll have a new student trustee for next year as well. We had a talent show that we had set up, but the event that it was with was canceled, so our event had to be canceled as well. Our class is having their end of the year party coming tomorrow. We are participating with the HEART program to have middle school students come to our campus, and we'll give them a tour so that they know what college is like for us and what we do, and that will be this Thursday. And lastly, we have the commencement ceremony that is coming up on May 22nd, and we will be doing concession stand for that.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. Are there any board member reports?
Yes, Chairman.
Earl?
I'd like to thank the foundation for the opportunity to have attended both the Hanford and the Tulare Life CSF luncheons. They were both very, very well received, I think, by the high schools. The only disappointment I had was that there were not more students coming, of them coming to COS. But with their scholastic abilities, I think they figure they can make it a four-year college. Problem is, they haven't figured out yet that everyone in that four-year college is going to be just like them. And they're not going to be the big duck in the pond any longer. And so we may see some of them back at the end of the first semester, which we generally do. But it was a very, very nice event, both of them. And I think the students appreciated it. And I want to thank Tim for the opportunity to have attended those.
Thank you, Earl. Are there any other board member reports?
I'd just like to say that the golf tournament, I'm sure Tim will talk a little bit about it, but the golf tournament was well attended. I think we had 23 teams, I think is what we ended up with. 6-person teams played in 4.5, 5 hours. One of the comments was made to me is that this tournament is now becoming the tournament to play in because it's a lot of fun. And that was great to hear.
You remind me of something which is embarrassing for me, because I ended up going to the East Coast and had to withdraw, and I told him, sign me up for a tea sponsor, and I don't think I paid for it.
But you had it.
We put it on your credit card.
But you had your tea sign, so you.
Any other board member reports? Thank you. Jim, foundation report.
Well, you guys stole all my thunder, but thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to close the loop on our summer session scholarship awards. We did make all those awards and advised all the students of those. So we handed out $100, $200 summer session scholarships. Those will actually be funded the first week of whatever session that those students participated in. So they'll get it as quickly as we can get it to them. We did have a wonderful COS Athletics President's Cup golf tournament. We did have 24 teams on the roster. We did have 23 show, but the 24th did pay. So we're solid that way. We had great sponsorships. We definitely made more than last year out of it. The numbers are still coming in. I think we're going to be in the $13,000 to $17,000 net on that. And another very important thing that we did is we educated those who attended why they're there, why we are raising this money. We had a full table trying to illustrate the cost of equipment for students, and we had other different visual aids to identify the cost of feeding a student and the travel costs and that type of thing. And I know firsthand that it resulted in a $500 impromptu sponsorship at the day of the event. Someone wanted to just buy, are these for sale? I want to buy something. I go, well, no, these are just illustrating the cost that we incur. He goes, well, then I want to sponsor something. And so we swiped his card, we rung him up right there on the spot, and that was great. We did have 2 well-received CSF luncheons, and thank you very much, Trustee Mann, for attending both of them. I appreciate you seeing both of them. And in fact, I'd like to spend some time with you to talk about the different compare and contrast of the 2. And I also wanted to thank Trustee Nunez's firm, M. Green & Company, for being a sponsor for that event. Both districts have expressed their interest in doing it again, so I think we'll continue. And Trustee Mann also has been in my ear a little bit about expanding it to other communities. What do you want? You folks decide which ones those might be. Last Thursday, we had a spectacular scholarship night. We made known $258,550 in scholarships. We all but 25,000 of that, which were the scholarships of less than 500, were physically awarded that evening. 500 and above were physically awarded. So I shook a lot of hands as the MC. I mispronounced a ton of names as the illiterate MC, and it was rough, but we made it through, and everybody was really appreciative. And so it was great. I just met with one of our largest corporate sponsors of scholarships, which was Edison International, and they're expressing a commitment to continue to do the Edison Scholars next year, which to the tune of $25,000. They did that just last Thursday. They awarded 10 students $1,000 and the other 5 students a combination of amounts, but for $15,000. So we're really excited about continuing that and doing some other stuff. So we got them to talk about the and part a little bit more. So we're looking forward to that. Our largest award that evening, interestingly enough, was from the Bernice Arnett Wilkie Memorial. And that is an endowed scholarship, and it's a $10,600 scholarship. Well, Mary, Bernice's sister, who administers that scholarship, she just felt that the two that she had as finalists were too well-deserving, and she couldn't distinguish between the two. So she wrote a check for the other $10,600. We were able to award both of them.
Oh, wow.
So it was really a wonderful gesture on her part. And then I have in front of you some of the upcoming events, some of which were already mentioned. And so with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Report, Cardinal Sherman.
Good evening, everybody. So we're working away on our warning report. As you know, it's due, it'll be due to the commission in October with a follow-up visit in November. Our editing team, which consists of Dr. Thea Trimble, Mr. Matt Beret, Mr. Christian Anderson, Dr. Ozturk, and Dr. Kristen Hollabaugh, and myself have been meeting once a week to work on the report, and we're feeling pretty good that we'll have a first draft by the end of June. So that we're working on that and responding to the things we need to respond to. In addition, the entire district is working on the other parts and processes that we agreed to do for our accreditation and in our planning and our governance. So the master plan task force has been meeting on a regular basis, and we actually just came from a meeting. Ms. Fu was on that one. She was there. And I think that's, and Ms. Staton and Mr. Hollabaugh and Dr. Oster were on that one, and Mr. Calvin. So we were all just in a meeting looking at the drafts of the master plan task force. There's about 25 people on that committee, and we're looking at the different drafts, the master plan. So we reviewed chapter 1 today, which was good, and we're going to be looking at chapter 3 next. And by the end of this summer, at the beginning of the fall, we'll have the whole document ready to go out for the district-wide review. And again, that is coming to the board in January, but we'll have lots of opportunities to see it before January. There was a academic senate summit on the master plan, and I'm sure Dr. Trimble's going to talk more about that, but I wanted to say from my viewpoint, it was extremely successful. We had a great turnout, and I did want to thank Board President Lori Cardoza for coming and joining us for part of that summit. We are also working on the annual report on the strategic plan, and that is in its final drafts. It's going to District Governance Senate tomorrow, and it will be here, it should be here at the June meeting for your review. And then the last thing about accreditation is that we do have a faculty member who was selected to serve on a visiting team in the fall. So we're really excited that Chris Keene from the math department will be going on a visiting team visit, and as we're learning more about accreditation, the more people that go on those visits, the better. So those are updates on accreditation. Any questions?
Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent report.
Okay, I have a couple of items to report on tonight, but before I do, I want to start with a true confession. I'm here to share publicly that at our last regularly scheduled board meeting, which was April 7th, we had a series of items for board member information on district policy proposals and administrative procedure proposals. And in my attempt to take over the management and the tracking of how we're doing the multiple revisions to BPs and APs, Megan and I have been working on that for about the last 5 weeks. I provided the wrong copies for the board packet of administrative procedure and the exhibit attached for AP 2410, which was the administrative procedure on how we do administrative procedure and policy. And so, if you'll remember at that meeting, there was also some exchange and there was an opportunity for us to provide comment. There was a opportunity for us to make sure that constituents like Academic Senate and others were able to respond. And you didn't get a lot of feedback from the audience or myself for that matter, because we were all thinking that you were looking at the correct copies of that and you were looking at the wrong copies of that. So those wrong copies certainly did generate some discussion, and they've gone back through the process now. I've provided all of you in your email the current AP Administrative Procedure for 2410 and the existing exhibit as it stands now that's been approved. And the versions that you saw last board meeting, which were actually advanced copies of what you'll see coming up in the future, were a next generation that were in the process and just got the wrong copy in the packet. It was completely my fault, and I apologize for that. But those are now going through the procedure, and they are back with Academic Senate, and Dr. Trimble and I have taken some time to sit down and look at them individually. And so for whatever changes may be coming forward, those will again be before you for information in the future.
So you're backing up to where you were before you gave us the wrong copy of the procedure. Using the wrong process.
Correct. And we had proceeded through the normal process, only you got the wrong result from that. My error. Okay, that was fun. Now, let me introduce Dr. Waldner, our Dean of Career Technical Education. I'm going to take these a little bit out of order, and she's going to introduce our most recent hire as our Deputy Sector Navigator for Advanced Manufacturing.
Okay, I want to introduce Gurminder Sangha, otherwise known as G. And so G is in a categorically funded position called Deputy Sector Navigator for Advanced Manufacturing in the Central Valley. So we're the fiscal agent for a grant that we got through the Doing What Matters campaign out of the Chancellor's office. And so that was actually a grant that we've held for the last 3 years, but I was the director of the Center for Applied Competitive Technologies along with some other things, but that role had changed a little bit, and G is now in that role. I am so excited about having him in that role because he comes with expertise in manufacturing. Most recently, he was the maintenance and engineering manager at, I'm saying that correctly, maintenance engineering manager at International Paper here in Visalia. So he brings a tremendous amount of expertise in an area for which there are a tremendous amount of job opportunities for our career technical education students and for our workforce development. Before that, he was with PPG Industries up in Fresno, was down south with the U.S. Navy. His degrees are in, actually he's a product of the community college system out of Fresno City College, and then a bachelor's in electrical engineering and an MBA also from Fresno State, both from Fresno State. So we were very fortunate. I don't think we pleased International Paper for stealing him away, but having that industry expertise in our educational system is important. He does represent us as a valley, all the way from Taft College, all the way up to San Joaquin Delta. But the opportunity to have him on our campus and let him pilot some regional type of work with employers through our systems is quite an important, I think, feat. And so we're pleased to have him here. And again, it's a categorically funded position. We just put the renewal grant in, so we know we're funded for at least another year, and chances are after that. But again, if you'll help me in welcoming Gurminder.
Would you like to say anything?
Again, thank you. I just want to give a brief history about why I joined this, is because I was working with Luann on developing the skill standards from industry side, which is, I believe, the voice of the industry, which colleges and police solicit the work industry wants in their employees, which is a part of colleges in that sense, though. And I was kind of thinking about it. It's wonderful because I've been doing this throughout the 10 years in working as advisory board for ECE at Lyles College of Engineering, and then through Fresno Compact, and through various other avenues that I've been working in supporting education systems. I love it. And as that discussion is that, hey, I love this, it's something I can do as a volunteer, I'm doing that. And Luann just happens to, there's a position, if you're interested, and look at the positions, that this is what I would love to do. So I kind of, at that day, just spoke to my wife, is that, I know it's going to sound different, I just told it, and I'm gonna lose a lot of money, but I'm gonna go for this one. I ended up talking to Luann, and here I am. And I'm really glad that I can bring a lot of value, because still I call industry is kind of my forte, and that's that I can bring that value to it, and hopefully we can have a better placement for our students within industry, because of a lot of demand. And I looked at the demand this morning, is about 17% in industry belief is mechanical only. So it means that we can produce more students in that sector, and then throughout the valley, I know at least 15 employers who can hire 4 or 5 mechanics today. So this demand is there. I hope I can serve all of you guys and working with all of you guys and try to, I think, invest in our candidates or our students. That's kind of my system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, the last thing I'd like to do, Mr. Vice President, is to call up our student representative, Ms. Diana Garcia. She'll join me up here. We'd like to take this opportunity at the last board meeting of our student representative to acknowledge Diana. You can stand up here. Acknowledge Diana for her hard work this year. I think all of us have had the benefit over the years of working with student representatives, and we've had some outstanding ones. I think for me, and I've done it here for a couple of years and a number of years in my previous life, she clearly ranks as one of the most accomplished student board members I've had the privilege to work with. The time commitment that you've provided has been outstanding, the seriousness with which you've taken the work. All of the student board members do a pretty good job here at the meeting and a good job with their student senate. What Diane did to go above and beyond was to participate in summits, attend the forums, come to the board retreat, and spend full days learning more about the college. So it's been a wonderful year for us to have you serve, Diana. We're going to miss you. We want to wish you good luck. We have a couple of little keepsakes for you. Your mug shot from the wall goes home with you, and your nameplate so that you can remember being here. And then we also have a thank you card for you, and because we know you're going on to college, we have a Visa gift card for you to take care of some of those expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
You know, I've sat next to Diana for the whole year, and I echo your comments as well. She leaned over and asked questions. Previous trustees, two trustees, they didn't even know that they didn't even know the topic, let alone be able to ask a question. And every once in a while, she's also sort of nudged me about something and asked a question, which is really designed to make sure it went the way she thought it should. I see a great future.
Politician.
I see a great future for you for whatever you want to do, and I really enjoyed it. And you have that down path, which is hard to do in such a short time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Acting President, I think over this past year, maybe you've been taking credit for some of the great questions you've been asking.
I got busted. Anyone else? Thank you.
That's all.
Oh, okay. Go to the report section. Is there, Dr. Trimble, do you have an academic report?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Stan, for clearing up the AP issue for us. I would like to report on the summit for the master plan. We had excellent attendance. The enrollment was actually higher than the first summit when we were all under the gun and panicked. And so I was really pleased. Some great discussions, some disagreements, but that's okay. I mean, they were really good, focused on the data that we've been supplied. And one of the best comments that I heard from a participant was that one of the things that they were realizing is that we were finally getting to the point where we were understanding how we could discuss and disagree about things and just put things on the table and it was okay. So it was really great. The master plan task force received some really valuable feedback. We also were able to generate some issues that didn't necessarily go with the master plan, but will probably be coming up in future, either the strategic plan or other planning initiatives. So we gave people the latitude that if something came up that they really felt they needed to put on the table, we allowed them to do that. We're currently in the process of conducting a survey of the attendees to get their formal feedback and any suggestions for any improvements. We foresee that these summits are going to become a somewhat regular event, especially as we go forward with some of the additional things for planning, like the strategic plan, which will be coming next, potentially the mission review. I would like to thank our co-sponsors. The event was co-sponsored by CSEA and CASAFA, the Office of the President, the Foundation, Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, and the Master Plan Task Force. We were represented there. We had lots of faculty, we had students at every table, we had a board member, we had a community member, faculty classified. It was just a real great day. The other thing that the Senate has been doing, as have all of the committees, is as part of our new procedures, all of the Senates and their committees took part in evaluations. And I have just recently received all of the evaluations for both the Senate and the committees that report to the Senate. What we'll be doing, the Executive Committee will be reviewing those results and using them to make suggestions to the Senate on potential changes. Some of them will be going to our retreat as we redo our Constitution. And the other thing that all the governance committees and senates will be doing is compiling a year-end report that will come forward eventually to the board, I believe in August. And our fall retreat is still on schedule, and we're now just basically calling it the Constitutional Convention. That's going to be the primary focus.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Curley?
Oh, and one thing I did forget is this Wednesday at our meeting, we're having the awards. So we get the Senate, again, with the support of COSTA and CASAFA, give awards for those faculty who had tenure plus 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, and we even have a 40-year person that will be getting an award, been working for CLS for 40 years. So if any of you would like to attend, it will be at 4:10. We'll do the awards first and business later.
Thank you, Keith. Costa, Ms. Bird?
Thank you. Exciting news for three folks. We have three retirees from the Costa ranks, and I believe they will also be honored tomorrow at the Senate meeting. They are Dave Bird, Dave De Silva, and Michelle Pistorius. We will be honoring them and giving them their little giants actually tomorrow night at the end of the year celebration. So I hope all of you are planning to attend. It's always a lot of fun. In terms of grievance resolution, we recently worked with the district to come to a grievance resolution. Because the district claimed an exemption from contractual scheduling procedures when adding late classes, the association found it necessary to file a grievance. And we did work a week ago today, May 5th, and developed a resolution. The district and COSTA confirmed that the following represents the steps followed when the Office of Academic Services determines that there is a need for additional late classes and time is of the essence. Late classes shall be defined as courses that are offered per semester or session, but added to the schedule of the district after full-time faculty members of the respective divisions have made their selections according to the provisions of Article 8, Section 8.2.3.4.2 of the COSTA Master Agreement.
When the need arises for late classes or a change in the time and/or day of class offerings, the Office of Academic Services shall report the need and/or change to the appropriate dean, who will communicate this information to the division chair in a timely manner. The dean and division chair will notify all affected unit members. The division chair will collaborate with faculty and convey the results of that collaboration with the dean. For all late classes, full-time bargaining unit members shall have priority in selection by seniority. If the late class remains unselected by any full-time bargaining unit member, the class can then be made available to adjunct faculty members. It's at this time that I will report to you that this is the end of my year as COSTA president. And so it's my honor to introduce the incoming COSTA president. I think it's a familiar face for all of us. Mr. Ed Sense will be beginning his role as COSTA president. I think he has a few words he wants to share.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening. Very glad to be back and privileged to work with a wonderful group of people. And we were very happy to have the grievance resolution. Unfortunately, I have to report tonight that apparently there's already been a nibble at that resolution to see how strong it really is. And we're trying to work around that, find out more information, because that's not a good thing to have happened a week after we sit down and agree to how things are going to proceed and find out that now there's a variation trying to be instituted. But as I find out more information about it, I'll probably report to you on it next month, and we'll see how it goes. But keep your fingers crossed that district managers will stay on track with this. We do all appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Anybody have any questions that we look at or Lisa?
And I apologize, I've got to go teach a class.
Good.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. CSEA, Mr. Lamar.
Just a short report, we're looking forward to sitting down with the
You
district.
know, you're the only guy that doesn't come to movies.
I know it, I gotta be different, we're theater. And we learn to project, so we don't need a microphone.
All right, I get that.
We're looking forward to sitting down with the district in negotiations. Hopefully, we're trying to set the time in June, fairly soon. And off of CSEA, I'd just like to say, as a CSE representative on many of the task force and committees, I would like to commend and piggyback and say thank you, Diane. I have sat across the table with you many occasions. You made this a far better place, so thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Cassava, Mr. Nichol.
40-year person is a Cassava member.
Yes, 4.
4 years ago. I think the last time somebody retired here was a 45-year member, and he was a sophomore from me as well.
Hang in there.
That leads us to information on item number 1, board policy and administrative procedures, newly revised, and first reading. Mr. Carrizosa, would you like to?
Yes, we have 3 administrative procedures for you to see tonight, and we have 1 board policy that's here for a first reading. And I'd like to draw your attention first to Administrative Procedure 6200. These are primarily in the category of administrative services, and Vice President Statton is here also, should you have any questions. But you can see that what's new is bold and underlined, and what's being proposed for elimination has a strike through in it. And I think this is the work of the Budget Committee this year, which is one of the 4 committees commissioned under the District Governance Senate. And they were tasked with taking a look at these administrative procedures and board policies associated with budget, with budget management, cash control, technology, procurement, and transportation, as you see there, and aligning them with the new integrated planning manual, any elements of the governance and decision-making manual, and most specifically, the College of the Sequoias resource allocation manual. So you'll see a number of areas where we've referenced alignment to the district strategic plan, to the processes for institutional program review, the master plan, the mission, and the district objectives. And then on Board Policy 6301, which is the actual BP that's here before you tonight for a first reading. This is on the cash control and fundraising procedures for student senate clubs. And this is actually a new board policy. And one of the things that Christine has worked really hard on with the finance office is to get a handle on what the past practices have been for the handling of cash and cash boxes and the plans and the implementation and then the follow-up that goes along with club fundraisers and the role that advisors play in those fundraiser procedures and the role that students play and student club officers. So you can see that this board policy is here really to kind of describe our commitment to appropriate finance protocols, to meeting the conditions of finance standards in an audit, and to also support the fact that these club fundraisers are really integral to raising funds for those clubs, providing enrichment activities, and expanding the opportunities for students through the additional resources that are generated. And then the Administrative Procedure 6360 deals specifically with technology. And this one's had a little bit more added to it, and it's actually intended to describe how we procure technology, what the steps are for that. It breaks down faculty and staff software purchases. Things that are purchased now in software oftentimes have licensing fees and additional fees for multiple access points. And so we've tried to bring those all up to date. Computer lab software and how lab software is issued on multi-station labs and servers. And then you can see a chunk that's been incorporated now to include the Tulare College Center, the Hanford Educational Center, and the labs on those campuses as well. Some attached exhibits, request forms, and the like. And then the last one is Administrative Procedure 6531, and this one lots of folks have worked on for several months now, and it's the actual transportation procedures for student or volunteer drivers in the district. And as you can imagine, this one was in need of some update to come into compliance with new laws related to student drivers, to driver's license requirements, to liability insurance requirements, age requirements. And so all of that's been considered here. It was fairly complicated from the standpoint that student drivers drive in many capacities, not just local field trips and that kind of thing, but in some of the sports like athletics where there's small teams and there's either student or volunteer drivers that support the coach because you might only have one coach, but you have to take two vans. So we had to think about and address all of those requirements. You have to, whenever you're working on a policy like this, you have to make it, or a procedure, you have to make it compliant, but you also have to make it practical. And so it was a lot of work to think through the different scenarios and not set up a system so cumbersome that student drivers and volunteers either couldn't become eligible to drive, couldn't meet the criteria or the conditions, or wouldn't because it was too cumbersome. Because we rely a lot on those volunteers to provide us those driving services. So beneath the lines that you see there, the multiple bullet points, I think the underlying premise of this one is that we needed to make sure that we met our liability requirements for safety. We needed to make sure that students were of sufficient age to be driving, especially with multiple passengers, all of them being other students in the vehicle. We needed to make sure that we had insurance coverage and protection, and we needed to make sure that the proper check-in and check-out procedures for vehicles were in place. And you can look through those, and if you have specific questions, we'll be happy to answer them for you. They're here for first reading tonight, so they'll be up for grabs for the next month. If you have additional questions that come up as you look them over and you want to call and ask those, we'll answer them for you, and they'll be back. The policies will be back before you for a second reading next month.
These are subject to, I think that, these aren't subject to first reading, but this is just a report.
Well, the BP 6301 is here under your information agenda as a first reading.
I see.
So that one would be coming back for a second reading. And then the administrative procedures are here for your information.
Well, then shouldn't, if it's first reading, shouldn't it go along under action?
We used to list it under action, but several months ago, we agreed that if it was here for a first reading, it would appear as information, because it didn't need action to go on to a second reading. But you'll know that that board policy 6301 is coming back for a second reading as an action item next meeting.
Well, but then on item 10, those are here for, those are second reading.
Correct. That's why they're
I
action.
got it. Any board member have any questions or comments on these items?
I'm not sure it's really related, but just a question for Stan on the like travel for the football team, for instance, where there's a great number of students that do we hire a contract with a bus company for those travel needs?
We charter buses for those big needs, yes. In fact, anytime that we've got more students than what can be carried in a van or two, we contract for that transportation.
Any other questions? Because policies are what makes us all run, does anybody in the audience have any comments on the policies or questions? All right, hearing none. As far as 6200, 6360, and 6531, we just information.
Correct.
As far as the other one, you're asking us to waive the first reading and pass it to second reading.
It's here for information as a first reading, and it'll be back on the action agenda for a second reading.
All right.
That makes sense?
Regarding BP 6301, does anybody, what's the board's pleasure as far as passing it on to the second reading?
Because I'm confused now.
So am I.
Well, yeah, we used to take action to move a board policy from a first reading to a second reading. That wasn't required. So we were bringing them for first readings on the information agenda item, and then they were coming back for a second reading on the action agenda. So
we still don't take action, yeah.
you don't need to take action on a first reading to move it to a second reading. You can, if you like, but
It's just not what I was waiting to call doing things. You know. I'm easy. So if you want us to just information out of mini and go on to item number 2.
correct.
All right.
Well, you just need to be retrained, right?
Well, you know, I don't know that I like it that way. You know, under the first reading, you know, before we take an action, to waive the first reading, pass on the second reading, it sort of obligated us to say whether we liked it, what we liked about it, and give everybody thoughts about how to do things. Then by the time we got to the second reading, unless we were asleep the first time, it was kind of a done deal. Well, if you do it this way, we'll be, instead of adopting it, we may be sending you back to start over again.
I don't know, this isn't the first time we've done it like this year.
First time I had to pay attention.
Maybe. But, and you know what, we're easy too. So if you would prefer that they get acted on twice, that's a real simple fix. You tell us what to do and
We'll take that up at a later time, but for now, we'll do it your way and go on to item 2. Quarter update to budget accountability.
It's not my way.
There's no name. Well, you and I are disagreeing, I'm going to acquiesce to you.
First budget accountability report, we're used to seeing this monthly on consent. We pull it out quarterly to kind of go over It compares to what we are asking you to approve tonight to what you approved at your April 7th board meeting. Some of the differences I wanted to highlight here, we've changed the report a little bit. You see at the bottom of the main chart that there's now a line called general fund position. This is where we will be noting any surplus or deficit that the general fund has. So currently, we show a surplus of $27,931. What that means is that we are projecting revenues over expenses of $27,631. The variances on the revenue side, other revenue increased by $23,000. That's due to a new grant for non-credit and trick. The offsetting expense is in letter B here. It was an increase to hourly counselor. So the full $23,000 is going to be spent on hourly counselor. The other changes here are expense transfers from one line to another, and they are detailed out there within the notes. Are there any questions on this report?
Good.
The next report is the annualized revenue projections. Currently, the annual projections as of April 14th, you see them here in this column. The changes are an increase of $478,000 to our state apportionment. That is due to P1, they awarded us more in access funding than they had projected. So we had an increase of $478,000. There was a small increase to EPA proceeds, and that is an adjustment to the 1213 EPA funds. They recalculated those, and we received additional funds. The local revenue, a decrease of $316,000. The second quarter lottery of $371,000 won't be received until April. So at the time this report was put together, it was not received. And then the decrease is due to a one-time indirect reserve no longer being used for 1314. So you see that here, $270,000. And then contra enrollment is now posted as a negative income, which is $155,000. So that's the decrease of $316,000. Are there any questions on this report? The next report is the expense projections for the year. So our annualized projections for the year are $47 million. This is unrestricted general fund only. We're projecting at this point that we will underspend our budget by $1.3 million. So we're projecting that of our budget, we will not spend 1.3. The year-to-date spent as of March 31st is the $35 million here. Were there any questions on this report? The final report is the quarter-end snapshot of all our different fund groupings. This is as of March 31st. One thing I always point out that this general fund ended fund balance of $120,000. That's just a point in time. It's not what we're projecting for year end. And the trend drawdown as of March 31st was $2.5 million. And we did not owe any temporary loans at that time or now. Were there any questions on this report or anything that you wanted to focus on more closely?
Yeah, I had just a brief question if I could. The variance on the expenditure side, that number seems larger than what I recall. And I know that we had a budget board committee meeting, Greg and I with Christine. It seemed like the numbers we talked about there weren't quite this large.
Are you back on the previous report?
The summary expenditure estimate
Oh,
of
correct.
$1.3 million.
You know, I actually, when we met, we were looking at this one. We might have drilled down to, you might recall that I was saying, I think Leangela and I discussed this, she's leaning towards probably under $1 million dropping when we close the year. I'm kind of out here, first year, saying maybe $1 million. These are kind of projections based on prior years. We don't look into each line and say, wait a minute, what will we spend? We discussed benefits, which there is going to be some money drop out there, but what we're trying to do is have our staff go person by person and say, truly, what do we need to budget there?
Okay.
Because last year,
I remember
we
you mentioned
spent,
that during the.
yeah, last year we spent 9.9 million. So are we really going to spend 9.6 this year? I need to make sure all our projections are correct. So
Okay.
you might have recalled that I probably said,
All right, you
maybe
satisfied
Angela's
my
thinking maybe a little less.
curiosity.
Her experience, so. Were there any other questions?
Go on to that tree then.
This is the 311Q for quarter ending March 31st. This first page is our projected 13-14 based on our working budget. So we're projecting, you see here on line E, of 2.4 million ending fund balance. This is due to the way that we have to account for our MA fund as a fund balance draw. So on line C, it shows fund balance deficit of 296,000. That's due entirely to our MA fund balance draw. And we do not expect that to be spent by year end. Most departments use that similar to a savings account. So we do not expect our fund balance to actually decrease by 296. Our FTES projection, 9,400 here. This is our projection to meet mid-sized college with a slight cushion. The most recent estimates I've seen are 9,376. And at P1, the mid-sized college threshold was 9,375. So we have already crossed that P1 threshold, which could vary, but not by much. Our FTS number will still be varying also, though, because it's also based on summer enrollment, which is going up. There also might be students dropping, but we do believe that we will definitely be over the mid-sized college threshold with enough cushion that we would cover anything that occurred during recalculation. The next section is our cash. We had 833,000 in actual cash, 2.5 million in funds borrowed from the TRAN. So our total cash was 3.3 million. The next section is our year-to-date actuals. And if you see here, this is the number that's put on the agenda item. And it shows that our fund balance ending is negative 7,878. That is just due to actual revenue that's come in at this point in time. This is the time of year that the state is deferring a lot of our apportionment, so that's why you see this negative number here. It will be either received by year end or accrued for by year end. So we are not going to have a negative fund balance at year end. Were there any questions on this report?
Thank you. Number 4, 2014 Student Success Scorecard.
Okay, our last item on the information agenda for you this evening is an opportunity for us to take a look at the 2014 College of the Sequoia Student Success Scorecard. You'll recall that last year, the Chancellor's Office implemented the first version of the Student Success Scorecard, now published online in the spring of each year. You may recall that there are, and I'm going to draw your attention to the first couple of pages in your packet, which are full-size PowerPoint type slides, but the first page of the Student Success Scorecard gives us the demographic information and really the kind of the description of our students. And just a couple of interesting points to note, I think that the under 20-year-old population is at 31.5% now, and the 20 to 24-year-old population is at 34.8%. So about 66%, a little better than 2/3 of our population is under 24 years old. And I know there have been times when that trend data has shifted upward a little bit, and we were older than we are now. The second page will remind you of the categories that are tracked in the Student Success Scorecard, and they're the 5 areas, well, 4 areas listed across the top, starting from the left to the right, and then the last area, which is flipped vertical, is the career technical education marker. But you can see on the far left, as they track across the top, the cohort tracked is for 6 years. So this is 6-year cohort data with the cohort ending in 2013. That means we would have to dial back to the enrollment of these students in 2007. So this is the cohort that began with COS in 2007, and over that 6-year period has been tracked in these key areas. Completion is the actual percentage of students, remember, completing their intended purpose for enrollment here, which is either their transfer, their degree, or their certificate. And you can see there the cohort numbers are probably what you want to glance at first, and if you follow those all the way across the top, they've been broken down in each area by 3 descriptors. The first, if we stay with just completion, and then the rest will all be very similar, but if we stay with completion, it's prepared students, unprepared, and overall. And prepared are students who come in, and the first course that they would enroll in English or math is a college level course in that area. Unprepared for college are students who come in and are not eligible by placement exam or do not enroll in their first English or math class at a college level. And then the overall is a combination, if you will, of an average of those two. So in the completion, you can see for the students who come in prepared, who are taking college courses at college level work, 66.2% complete, meet their completion goals. Unprepared, 35.8%, and then the combined number, or the overall figure for that, is 42.8%. Moving to the right, persistence is measured in this metric by students who enroll consecutively in the fall to fall enrollment. So they start their first year in the fall, complete the first year, and successfully enroll for college their second year. Students who are prepared do that at 63.7%, unprepared 65.7%, and then the overall 65.2%. The next metric is a 30-unit marker. The data has shown that students who complete 30 units have a greater propensity to complete their 2-year college goal and objective. And so you can see that the more we can get students to meet that 30-unit completion mark, the better their chances of succeeding in meeting their 2-year goals. Students who come in prepared are doing that at 70%, almost 71, 70.8. Students coming in, quote, unprepared are 63.5% for an overall of 65.2. And then the students that we define as remedial are students who are coming in and not only beginning below college level, but who are successfully taking the prerequisite or the remedial course and then enrolling in and completing the college level course that follows it. So they are starting below, and we're providing them an opportunity to build prerequisite skills, and from that, they're then moving into the college level course for that subject. In this case, we track English, math, and ESL. And you can see the percentages of students who are successfully completing those college level courses following their prerequisite skill course. And then the last category shows you the career technical education, which is percentage of students who came in with the expressed goal of completing a career technical education certificate, and they successfully complete that certificate. And we're at 53.1%. So that's this year's snapshot in time. Remember, it goes back to the students who were enrolling here initially in 2007. And then the pages that follow for you, we tried to provide you some trend data. Dolly put together a 5-year band. And to get, to orient yourself to this, if you glance again across the top, the representation of all students, and you look at the 2003, 4, the 4, 5, the 5, 6, the 6, 7, and then the 7, 8 year, you can see we're currently representing those students who enrolled in the fall of 2007, so they're the 07, 08 students. And you can see that by the arrow indicator we have on the side, whether or not the trend data for this year over the prior year has gone up or down. And the overall observations we've made from this first one is that of the 13 metrics, those metric areas, 7 of them showed decreases over the previous year. 1 area showed an increase. 5 of the areas remained significantly unchanged. So while they may have gone up or down, it was by a small enough margin that it wasn't statistically significant. So, and I guess the last thing that I shared with you in the cover memo that we put together is that the scorecard is still a brand new tool. Not only are we still getting better at perfecting the input data that we provide to the various state reports from which they compile this, but the Chancellor's office itself in their assessment office is actually still revising the metrics that they're using to compute the scorecard. So it's a little too early for us to hang our educational soul on any of this. In fact, it's even a little too early to say that we have good baseline data, because this year they altered their metric just a little bit and computed the scores differently than they did a year ago. So until we get at least 2 consecutive years where none of the metrics have changed, we're not going to have real base scores yet, but you can get an idea from our data of what it looks like initially.
Any questions, Sam? Do you have any preliminary explanation of why the trend's down?
No.
I guess that's our challenge then.
Well, and I think that at least for me, and Dolly, I would ask you to elaborate as well. For me, I think it's hard to make any real judgment from that. And here's one of the reasons why. If you look at that cohort from 2007-8, those were the years, this is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Those were the years when we were starting to significantly increase enrollment. And we were trying to get to 8,000 FTES, 9,000 FTES. Even, I think in 2009, we were at 10,000 FTES. The larger our student population was, we anticipate, based on this trend data that you see right there, that we're probably going to notice some sort of a decrease in the actual performance against these indicators, which could tell us that it's pretty hard to provide all of the support services necessary to meet these targets for a population like ours if you expand that population too quickly.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. We're not very different than the trends, the statewide trends. On the major areas, statewide, the increases are very, very small, less than 1%, less than 0.5% in most of the areas. So our trends are not very different than the statewide trends.
I see the numbers for ESL are horrible.
I can address that, John. We don't actually fit into that category, although they require us to do the data. In many colleges, they have an ESL program that you advance into an English class that would be considered ESL. Our students don't do that. They go from ESL to English, and the ESL data tracks students who would go from a basic skills ES class to a transfer level ESL class. And we don't have transfer level ESL classes. So our data in that category is never going to get better. It's not valid data for us as a college because we don't have transfer level ESL classes.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Concludes that. You done?
Yes. Thank you, John.
Next is a consent calendar, which consists of minutes for 3 meetings, personnel report, the payment of bills, working budget approved for 2014, and declaration of surplus property. If anyone wishes to remove any of these items and have them treated as a regular item, please say so, the audience or the board. I'd like to take off 9. I entertain a motion to approve items 5, 6, 7, and 8.
So moved.
Second. Moved and second, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Voted 5-0. I pulled 9, huh? 4-0. Oh, 4-0, you're right. Pulled 9, I just wanted to ask some questions. Water shares and ditch stock, I don't know anything about the Evans ditch. Some ditch stock is really valuable and some isn't. Some has a lot of water, and some don't. And a lot of times these shares are traded. Even the thing about our operation in Tulare, even though the Evans, where is the Evans ditch? Anybody know?
Visalia.
Huh?
It's Visalia.
Do they used to serve the old farm or something?
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to selling it, but I'll talk about it a little bit more. First of all, you say you estimate it's worth $3,500 per share. How did you determine that?
You know, this actually came forward from Provost Larry Dulo, and I used most of his information. That's why it's just an estimate.
All right.
And I think he had been looking to take this action for quite a while. And I was new, and he talked to me about it, and we just finally got around to doing it, so.
And it says, we have been, I guess, there's an annual assessment of $1,000 a year, and we've been letting somebody else have the stock in exchange for that. I don't know if that was a good deal or not. I would, if the stock has much water, it may not be. But also, the way this stock works, and I think probably several board members have some experience with this, is just because you can't get the water to where you want it doesn't mean anything, because this farmer will trade water here in exchange for water over here. Before we go sell this, should we make sure that the price is valid, and should we also make sure that maybe we ought to look at our own water rights? Right now, the legislature is contemplating regulating groundwater. We could find ourselves in a situation where they wouldn't let us pump. And I would like myself a more thorough look at what the various options are, particularly in consideration. I'll get you the bill information if you want it, with what the legislature's thinking about doing it. And running an ag program, we may wish we had dig stock, and we may want to do some trade. I don't know.
Yeah.
And don't interpret what I say as objecting to this. I don't feel informed enough to close.
That's okay. We weren't going to take any, basically, we couldn't even consider selling it until the board declared it as surplus property. And that's not saying that you have to tonight, we can continue to discuss.
I'm not comfortable doing that yet because I don't know.
Yeah.
I want more information to decide. I don't know how, if the rest of the board disagrees with me, we'll proceed.
I think what I would do either way is we'll need some legal counsel, and preferably counsel that specializes in water rights. And they might be able to tell us more about options. I do know there's probably interest in this, and it would be a bid, and it would go to the highest bidder. It's administered by Tulare Irrigation District, and they have a list of all the current.
Well, let's make sure we're not interested in light of what the legislature's thinking about doing with groundwater, which I think is where you get most of your water in Tulare now.
Tulare, we are all wells.
Yeah.
How would you like it if the state suddenly decided you can't only pump half as much next year? And they could do that. And there's actually, a lot of folks are worried that they'll do that. So,
You know, Dick Schaefer may be a good person to contact, find out more
We-
information about it.
We can definitely do some more homework and some more research. And tonight's item wasn't to imply that we were going to rush to sell. It was the first step in declaring it as surplus. We don't have to do anything else after that. We can still keep it forever if we want. But if we don't want to declare it as surplus yet, we can table this tonight and then bring back more information.
well, the rest of the board heard what I had to say. I'd like to hear what they think.
I would just, it raises some questions, what John says, so I would just probably prefer to just table it.
So act on this, act on
I'm not
this
sure if
separately.
this would, we need to know if this applies to, has anything to do with our Tulare property. Is it just a pertinent to the Linwood?
It is.
Then
Right now it
I'm
has
not sure it
nothing
makes
to
any
do
difference.
Well, no, its location rights are at Linwood, but what John's saying is there may be information that we can learn about how it can transfer for us into rights in other locations where we need it.
There's farmers that have rights in aqueduct. They can't even get the aqueduct water. Well, nobody can right now. There was water in it. And they'll trade it for Kings River water. And it moves all around. And people like Dick Schaefer keep track of it.
It's a commodity.
So rather than table it, I guess I'm saying is you will table it, but make a more thorough report and come back. Is that what the board wants to do?
Yes.
So we just need action on this individual item,
No.
we'll table it.
Okay. Is there-
Yeah, I move that we table item 10 regarding, item 9 regarding the surplus water stream.
And I'll second that.
Second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 10, board policies. Mr. Carasosa.
Okay, these items are on our action agenda tonight. They are coming back, having been reviewed already and shared publicly for information and opportunity for input at a first reading. These are second readings for action. The first one is Board Policy 2510. This is participation in local decision-making. This policy has been aligned now to our new district governance and decision-making manual roles and responsibilities. It also references its connection to Board Policy and Administrative Procedure 2410, which is the one we talked about earlier this evening, whenever there's the opportunity to be involved in decisions regarding approval of board policies or administrative procedures. Unlike our earlier version of this policy, we broke out how staff are involved, meaning classified staff, how students would be involved, meaning student senate, and then how academic senate is involved. And under academic senate, you'll see we went to a fair amount of detail to reference Title V, Assembly Bill 1725, and delineate 10+1 items and non-10+1 items. And then we kept intact our current language on how we agree or how we consult or collaborate with academic senate to primarily rely upon the advice or judgment of senate and or to mutually agree. And so that's the second reading on the work we've done on Board Policy 2510. The next one, 3250, is institutional planning. And again, this has been brought into alignment with the integrated planning manual. Talks about the systematic cycle of evaluation, integrated planning, resource allocation, and continuous quality improvement. It's also been updated with some of the new terminology and labels. And then the final one, yes, 3260 is institutional program review, and this board policy also has been through a fair amount of revision now to align with the new annual program review process that's part of our integrated planning and self-assessment, and it aligns with the cycles and timelines in the integrated planning manual, specifically this section for institutional program review.
Order time for the first one being board policy 2510. Now, all the various constituents and colleagues have reviewed this and signed off.
Yes. And we tried to list those for you up at the top to show you what the dates were, senior management, academic senate, and opportunity for anybody here to participate or respond tonight. And this is the version that Dr. Trimble's already seen. So I know I'm good with this one.
The board have any questions or comments? No? Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I move we approve board policy 2510.
Is there a second? Move in second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 4-0. That, what?
I thought that was roll call, is it not?
Is it?
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not.
Roll call's coming up on the next item.
Okay, that takes us then to board policy 3250. Same thing, all various contingencies have reviewed it. The board approved,
Yes.
and, oh yes, and the board have any comments or a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. And then the last one, board policy 3260. Assume same situation.
Program review, whoops, yeah.
Yeah, we were,
I
just
move
got
that we
back from the
approve.
coast.
No, I know you're still on.
No, I haven't had a chance to restudy it yet.
Ken,
I move for approval.
And who seconded it?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That leads to item 11, consolidation of government board election. Mr. Carrizosa.
Yes, this is our routine resolution that comes up during this time of election cycle year. You can see provided for us by the Tulare County Office of Education. This resolution sets forth the recitals to establish our participation in the consolidated election coming up this November.
I move that we adopt resolution 2014-05.
I'll second.
Move second, any further discussion? Megan, please poll the board.
Trustee Venus,
Aye.
trustee Sherman,
Aye.
trustee Mann,
Aye.
trustee Burnell.
Aye. That leads us then to item 12, Board of Trustees regular meetings proposed date change.
Yeah, we wanted to come back to you now as a result of some of the recent decisions we've made to support calendar committee recommendations for the Veterans Day placement on our recent academic calendars. We adopted the 2014 regular meeting calendar at our December meeting in 2013. At the April 7th meeting, we determined to keep the current 14-15 academic calendar unchanged, observing Veterans Day on Monday, November 10th. This date now conflicts with the originally scheduled regular November meeting because we were using Mondays as our regular meeting dates. Thus, the district is recommending that the Board of Trustees reschedule the November regular meeting to Monday, November 3rd. We consulted with Board President Cardoza. She looked at the two options on either end of that week before or week after and recommended the week before November 3rd.
Any discussion?
That's the day before we get our election.
It is Tuesday, yeah, that's the evening before election, night before elections.
I move we approve the change.
What a lousy day to pick.
Well, I don't think she knew it was the
Lori out running for election.
I don't think she realized it was the night before the,
If we still need to campaign by then, we're probably in trouble.
I'm just teasing you. I'm sorry, were you trying to make a motion?
I did make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion carries 4-0. Item 13, approval of remediation plan of the Live Oak Building. Ms. Knapp.
Okay, good evening. We have a proposal for a remediation plan, as you mentioned, of the Live Oak Building. You'll recall in May of June and June of 2011 is when the issue first surfaced. And with the help of consultants, we realized that there was mold in the building. It was not found to be airborne, but it was problematic, and it was in all the walls. And there were large cost estimates to renovate that, fix up the building. We are here a couple years later, a few years later, and really we're finding ourselves with the building that if we don't take care of it, it will just continue to further deteriorate. And we would like to propose getting it back to the standard that it was, clearing out all the mold, which will involve work in the walls, the roofing, some of the insulation, and a lot of work with flooring, especially as it attaches to the walls. We tried to our best to get our estimates down, and it's not a lot less, but the current estimate right now is at $1.27 million. That includes construction of almost $1 million, and then all the soft costs on top of that. I mentioned a $67,000 contingency. That was actually just in the soft costs. I should have pulled out, there's a $159,600 contingency, or 20% of the construction costs. The construction costs are just under $800,000. If you chose to do this, what we wanted to present primarily tonight was how are we going to fund this? And what we would be proposing is much of the interest that was earned on the Measure I funds, the interest itself has just been set aside. It is there and available, and it's almost exactly half of this amount, about $635,000. It was actually $631,000 last time we looked, and as it continues to earn. And then we have state scheduled maintenance funds that will be coming our way for 2014-15. And we are estimating those currently at about $650,000. It's a little unusual to take a big chunk like that, but our Dean of Facilities has talked a little bit with the state and thinks that this could be used for maintenance or refurbishment of this building. And so provided that that project would be approved by the state, provided the state still funds scheduled maintenance at close to $650,000, so there's a few caveats there. We would propose using the interest matched with the state scheduled maintenance funds to make this repair. I put in some notes on why I feel like the interest doesn't legally have to follow exactly the bond language, but usually that's what's recommended. It's recommended by our auditors and by our bond counsel. So I put in some of the verbiage that was there in the bond language, about repairs, upgrade, construction, and equipping, acquiring classrooms, facilities, and sites here on campus. So I do feel like it would fall under there. This would, again, bring the building back up to a usable state, and for us to look from that point forward at what time or what point might we want to use it again, what idea would we want to use it for. So that is our proposal tonight. Also attached are the preliminary estimates, and you'll see actually a timeline kind of at the bottom there of that second page, which if it was approved by you, we would start procuring the preliminary plans as of June 1st. We would do working drawings for about 6 months from October 1st through March 1st. We would then allow 6 months, unfortunately, for BSA approval. And we would then advertise for bid, award construction, and probably complete the project in about 2 years. Could be faster, but that's a very safe timeline. And again, our Dean of Facilities is here. He did most of this work, so if you have additional questions.
I have a question, 2 questions actually. The scheduled maintenance at 635, is that going to affect any of our other maintenance programs or something that gets deferred?
We would be deferring the other projects. This would be our #1 priority.
Right, we'll be using all of our allocation this year for this purpose.
Okay, and then once it's brought back up to standard, would it be just like a child development center?
That was our proposal, and we had a lot of discussions with the president as well. When we got into making it into offices or redesigning, we just kept looking at pretty high costs, if I recall. They were much higher than this, And our goal is to get it to something that we could afford to fund. But that's our proposal at this point.
Yeah, so
There may
it
be-
doesn't, these costs, Greg, don't include any other restructuring or modifications.
So
It's
when
just,
would we be using it as a child development?
that's what Christine was just saying, is we haven't made that determination at all. That's a different decision. That's a decision to come back to the board then and say, now we have a mold-free facility. What do we want to do with it? But if we waited and continued to do, at least my feeling was if we waited and continued to do nothing with it until we had enough money to do something bigger or better with it, we might not ever be able to do anything. We would have missed the opportunity to at least remove the mold.
But wouldn't we be setting ourselves up for that to be a child development center again? I mean, I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah, I know, but the answer is not necessarily. We're just trying to get the mold out of it.
If we want to use it for something else, then we've got to come up with a lot more money to be able to use it for something else.
There's a lot of different ways to look at that. You know, someone else might want to use it for something else. And when you contract with them, they do the repairs on the building or they make the modifications. I just wanted us to be able to have something that we could market or make a decision about that didn't have mold in it.
I was also going to interject the scheduled maintenance. We haven't received much more than 200,000 in ages, so the 650 from the state is a very large one-time amount. So if we're coming out for 3 years with no scheduled maintenance from the state, and last year we received 109,000. So it's not like we have $650,000 worth of plans that we're setting aside. What I'm foreseeing is if there were emergencies, we still have our capital projects funded.
Okay, so you kind of led me into my question, and that would be, what other major projects, maintenance-wise, would we be deferring by taking it all here, but apparently not much, I guess.
There's always more we can do.
Yeah. We have a scheduled maintenance 5-year plan that we turn in every year. And so within that plan, we've tried to live within our means, knowing that we wouldn't have, because we did some with Measure I all these years, we took, because there was no state money, we did with just Measure I money. We've done a very good job on getting our roofs in order, getting our infrastructure in order. So it's just really deferring those projects. There's nothing that is, we don't have any roofs that are just leaking like sieves, which is usually our first line of defense in scheduling.
Yeah, so you prioritize some things and feel like this, you could handle it this year.
Yes.
We figured because of the recent work we've been able to do, the work that Eric and his department has done with Measure I, with the improvements that we've made, if there was a window of opportunity, Ken, where we could take the scheduled maintenance funding for 1 year and put it all into a project and not have something else big suffer, this was our window of opportunity.
And you, Eric, you feel comfortable you get that kind of money from the state?
Right now, we'll know tomorrow's the May revise. It was already in the January 10 budget. And so right now, it looks like everything's holding out.
Okay. I move we approve the.
I've got some more questions. Are there any questions? No. Comment first is that from my view, though, the kind of response that Greg had to say is that before we return to child care center, I would be convinced that that's the best interest of education. And so I hope that the administration of the board consider that decision yet to be made. I have a couple questions. Have you selected an architect for this yet?
I have not, but.
As a college?
Well, we haven't had that discussion. I would be leaning towards Darden, only because they were, in our last RFP process, there were 4 architects in that pool. Darden was one of them. One of the others have gone out of business. The third one we don't do business with anymore, and the fourth one we've never done any business with.
Well, I don't know who any of those are, I don't want to know, but I would hope that you make some effort to get more confirmed opportunity, and in any event, go through some sort of process. I don't mean a bidding process, a qualification-based process before you pick somebody. And one of the, Lori Cardoza had asked some questions earlier of me at least, about whether or not these fees are appropriate. And I think she was thinking that she's used to this 8% number. And one thing I do know is retrofit is a heck of a lot more than that's to deal with brand new, so that would be real high. Are those your numbers, or did you get those from some architect?
These are state numbers. If you notice, everything is in blue here. There's a couple that are in red that don't show that well that we overrode in our value engineering process. For a remodel, the state would pay 10% for the architect, so this is at 10%. The contingency is at 7%. Those are the two differences from a new building. So no, these did not come from an architect, they came from the state's, what the state would fund if this was a state-funded project.
So it's just the budget at this time?
Knowing that they're very rigid, that would be the budget that we're stuck to live within.
Well, I'm assuming you're not worried about living with it.
In other words, they may budget this much and it might not cost that much.
You feel comfortable that you won't exceed these numbers, you feel comfortable that you're not going to need to exceed these numbers. Not the construction numbers, the plans, the items 2 and 3.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that if we select an architect, that's what they're going to have to live within, or they wouldn't be the architect.
Cool. And I'm also pleased to see it's not coming out of general fund. So that's all my questions. So I guess you were going to make a motion. You still want it?
I still will make that motion that we approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 14. Approval of employment agreement in the district and the provost at Tulare campus. Mr. Brash.
Dr. Duda is currently on a one-year contract with the district to serve as the provost for the Tulare campus. His current term employment agreement ends June 30th of 2014. However, with tonight's item before you, we are proposing that his term as a provost for Tulare be extended by 1 year, effective July 1st, 2014 through June 30th of 2015. All employment agreements such as this come to the board for approval. And at this time, I would ask that you formally approve the employment agreement between the district and Dr. Duda under the terms specified within the board item.
Any questions, Mr. Brash? Is there a motion?
I so moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And last one is curriculum new modified and amended. Dr. Turner.
Good evening again. We have a curriculum report and the district is recommending that you approve the curriculum as presented. On the first pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all course modifications for various reasons. Some are 5-year reviews, some are alignment with the course ID. Some have been approved for transfer, so there are course number change. That's the first group, and some unit changes and alignments. Starting on page 7, we have new courses, and those continue on page 8 and 9.
Anybody have any questions?
Solutions are 9, 10, and 11, and 12, and 13. We have a lot of these solutions. Most of them for repeatability, they're no longer offered. And then we have program modifications on page 14 and 15.
Okay, I'll do it myself. Any questions now?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I got an email, something to the effect that to do with our law school or something, will that be something that comes?
That course was approved at the last board meeting. Yes, it's a street law course is the only course that we need to add for that program, and it had gone through curriculum and it was on the agenda for the last one. I don't think it's this one. Let me just double check. I think what was the last meeting. Yeah, it was at the last meeting. That one was last.
Any questions?
Move we approve, new deletion and modify.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Stan, you have anything else?
Thank you.
No, sir.
I'm sure you'll be glad that Lori returns.